Hi, everybody. My name's Dave Clausen. I'm a psychologist with the school board. Yeah, and I'll hand it over to my colleague.
So I'm Lisa Mulvihill. I'm also a psychologist with the school board. And today we're going to talk about something that probably all of us struggle with at one time or another in our lives, some perhaps more than others. And it's about procrastination and getting things done. And not just getting things done, but getting the things done that aren't particularly exciting or more difficult to do.
Yeah. All right. So a lot of this information is based on a book, and we'll put that recommendation in right away. The book is by a psych prof by the name of Timothy Pitchell, and we'll put that in. And the book is entitled The Procrastination Puzzle, Solving the Procrastination Puzzle, sorry. And that is one of the best books, quite frankly, that I've read. It is very short, direct, and to the point, and extremely helpful. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about what procrastination is. Procrastination is simply voluntary delay. There's something that needs to get done, you know it needs to get done, and you don't get to it. Frequently by doing something else, but sometimes just by being a squirrel and lying on the couch. There are lots of different ways to procrastinate, but it's always voluntary delay.
Yeah, and you can all think of a time probably that you've had this occur in your lives. And so these are suggestions not only for your kids who might be struggling, but also for all of us. And Dave and I think it's fair to say we use these strategies, and we're going to talk about some examples later on about when we use this as well.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just putting in the, and it won't let me change the slide until I do it. And Pitchell is not a fun last name to
Oh, I can put
remember.
that in, Lisa.
P-Y? Is it P-Y?
Pychyl.
Well, why don't I know that? That seems pretty straightforward. Okay. So there you have my email address and the, oh, there's someone else coming in. Just for people coming in, once again, we are recording. So if you want to change your name in the bottom corner of your rectangle where your face or your camera shows up, please do so. So we wanted to talk a little bit about procrastination as an emotion management strategy. Think about a time in your life where you had a task to do that you really didn't want to do. For me, it might be my taxes, or when we have to write reports. I think Dave and I could both say we'd much rather spend time with kids than write the reports. But a time when you really just thought, ugh, I don't want to do this. And then think about a time when you put it off, you procrastinated and what you did. And usually it's a way to manage the feelings that you have around the task that you need to do. Okay.
And so, if I've got taxes to do, for example, then I might find that, oh, I'm cleaning up in the kitchen. And so I'm managing my emotion about doing the taxes because it's so unpleasant, and I might not be able to find all the stuff that I want, and that means I have to go looking for it. And I hate doing that because I'll be beating myself up because why am I not more organized, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so I get away from all of that and I clean up the kitchen. So there are two good things, and that makes me feel better. And that's why I'm doing that task instead.
One last thing, another person came in. We are recording. So if you want to change your name just to be certain that you're not identified, go ahead and do that. And I think I can tag on with an example. And when I was in university and school, my room was never as clean as it was during an exam period. So that's an example of, you're doing something, but you're not really doing the thing that you should be doing.
And this is important because a lot of people think about procrastination as just a behavior. It's just something you do. And it's true, it is something that you do, but it's based on trying to make yourself feel better. And so then, part of what goes along with this is we have all kinds of things that we tell ourselves in order to make sure that we're okay with the procrastination. And those things can be extremely unhelpful. It's easy to tell when somebody else is doing this, and
Mhm.
it's hard to tell when you're doing it. I'm sure lots of you could identify what your kids say. Oh, this doesn't matter. I've got tons of time. It's only worth 10%. No, really, that's not a big deal. I already know that stuff. Don't have to work. Don't have to spend any time on that. These are all things. It's like tax season. Tax season. That's not till April. Like I got tons of time. Don't have to worry about that at all. So people tell themselves all kinds of things in order to make it okay that I'm not doing this thing that matters right now.
So yeah, we'll do it tomorrow. And if you guys are thinking of ones to yourself, you can feel free to pop them in the chat. You don't have to, but things that you tell yourself that you know you're telling yourself things that are getting in the way of you completing what you need to be completing. And these are our thoughts, right? These are our thought processes that go through our heads lots and lots every single day.
It would be interesting to see a few things put in the chat about what you hear from your kids and
Yeah.
about how they're putting things off.
Yeah.
Um, but there'll always be that theme about not right now. It's not important right now. Doesn't really matter.
Or I'll feel like doing it tomorrow, right?
Right.
For sure. Tomorrow is going to be so different that you'll feel like doing it then when you don't feel like doing it now, which is not the case.
Yeah. I can't remember what the next slide is.
Well,
Oh,
how we're going to switch this around. So from I can't to I can. So what are these? This is getting into really some of the strategies that we can do to move ourselves towards a goal, even if it's a goal, like we say, that we don't really want to do, something that we find less pleasant, right? Less pleasant. We want to avoid it so that we feel better. Okay. So are there some things that you guys hear from your kids? The thing is, you want to be really aware of it, right? And for yourself, you want to be aware of how are you rationalizing putting off today what you should be doing till tomorrow. And so if you don't, if these thoughts just go through your head and you automatically, oh yeah, it doesn't matter, I'm going to go out with my friends. Oh, it doesn't matter, I'm going to clean the house. Oh, it doesn't matter, I'm going to, if you're not aware of it and you become sort of automatically avoiding, that's what will happen. You will continue to avoid. But if you're aware of what your thoughts are, we always tell students that we go present to, notice what you're thinking, be aware of these rationalizations. Being aware is the first step to being sort of more, a little bit more in control.
and when we're not aware, the rationalizations sound really good. They make 100% sense, right? Like, yeah, of course I'll feel more like doing it tomorrow. Of course it doesn't matter that much. And unless we're really paying attention to what we're thinking, that we're just straight out going to believe what we're telling ourselves there. Okay. And so there are a few that are really common. And what we're going to do for the next little bit is we're going to go through some of the rationalizations that happen and what the antidote is to those.
Mm-hmm. So Dave talked about them. I can't, I don't want to, it doesn't matter, I'll do it tomorrow, right? So be aware of those things as they're going through your head. So Dave's going to do something now, and it's called, are we going to do the 30-second?
Sure. Yeah. Okay. We can do that. Okay.
Let's do that for a little bit.
Okay. Maybe we'll do it for 20 seconds.
Okay, fair enough.
All right. So one of the things that we do with students in classes is thoughts go through our head really, really quickly. Actually, it's super easy to miss them because they do happen so incredibly quickly. And so what we're going to do is we're going to be quiet actually for 20 seconds, which will feel like a very long time. And all I want you to do is follow your thoughts. I want you to hear what you're telling yourself. And this can go just about anywhere, but just pay attention to where they go. Okay, you ready? Go. And stop. Okay. Now, if you're like most people, your mind will have jumped around all over the place. You might have done some planning. You might have been thinking about what you need to do later on, what's for supper, what's going on this evening where you have to cart the kids. You may have thought about work stuff. You may have thought about past events, social interactions that you either enjoyed or more frequently did not enjoy, and what you would do about them instead. Our mind jumps all over the place. And people are surprised at how quickly your mind moves. And estimates are that about every 5 seconds, we think about something new. And so, because of that, we need to really pay attention in order to catch our rationalizations.
Okay. So some of the main rationalizations, or one of the main ones, is to counteract the idea that giving in will feel good. You counteract with, I won't give in to feel good. So, it's that idea of, I need to do this now. I'm not going to give in so I can feel good in the short term, because inevitably what happens when we put things off, and then you get to the crunch time and you don't think it's going to take long, and it does, and then that horrible feeling of panic sets in and it becomes worse. So it's counteracting, oh, I'll do it later, with, I'm not going to give in. I am not going to give in to have that time to feel good, that briefer time to feel good. So it's being very intentional about noticing and then counteracting it with something that's a little bit more realistic, in terms of, you need to do this. And if you've lived it before, it's going to feel worse if you do have that period of feeling good for the short term.
Mm. One of the things that's really powerful about procrastination is there are often multiple things that help us feel better. This is why we do it over and over again, even though a little ways along the line, we're going to realize, oh, I really caused the problem for myself. And the things that help us are, A, it immediately feels good to not do it. And B, we frequently tell ourselves, oh, I'm going to do it later. So not only do I feel good because I'm not doing it right now, but I feel good because I'm going to do it later. And so I get that good feeling about, oh, yeah, it's going to get done, without actually accomplishing anything. And so I won't give in to feel good is about, I'm going to accomplish something and then I'm going to feel good. And we're going to get the feelings in the right order here. This is the way the world works. First I do it, then I feel good.
And this is often, we both alluded to this, that tomorrow will be different. I'll feel like doing this awful task. I'll feel like doing my taxes tomorrow. Tomorrow will be a new day. But actually, it's, again, being realistic and saying, I'm not going to feel more like doing my taxes tomorrow. I'm not going to be a brand new person tomorrow, because I don't like doing my taxes any day. So it's a matter, again, of catching yourself, realizing, I'm not going to feel more like doing it tomorrow. I got to get started today. Okay.
One of the things, if you read this book, it's super interesting actually. One of the things that humans are really bad at is what's called affective forecasting. It's predicting what you're going to feel like tomorrow. And so today you can see all the things that are impacting you. You can see that I got to make supper, and then I have to get to practice, and then I have to do this, and then there's this work left to be done, and and I'm already dead tired. So you can see all of those things clearly because they're right on your plate. If it's not right on your plate, you don't see it and you don't pay enough attention to it. Tomorrow is going to be exactly the same. You're going to have a whole bunch of things impacting you then too, and you will feel the same way, but we're really, really bad at predicting that. And so this is really convincing. And at the same time, personally, I find that when I say this to myself, I'm sitting in front of the computer and it's like, oh, I got to write. I don't want to write. And it's like, yeah, you won't feel any more like doing it tomorrow. Get going now. It'll be just as bad tomorrow as today. And that has a way of taking this thing out of it. Yep, that's right. Let's get it out of the way. And again, this is where we put some of them together. I'll feel good at the end. I won't feel good right now. Let's go.
So we've talked about feelings. We've talked about how we talk to ourselves. Now we're going to talk about, what do we do? What do we do? So one of the things that I know Dave and I just do, so I'll come back to report writing again, is sometimes a report can be quite daunting. It's a lot of thinking and integrating information in our jobs and that kind of thing. So it can be something that perhaps we'd rather put off. One of the things that I find really helpful it's in the book that Dave spoke about is just get started. Just do something. And sometimes for me, it's as easy as putting the name, the date of birth, and that kind of thing, and starting on some background information. And then I can get into a kind of a flow. But just getting started is the first step to doing something.
If you think about your child doing an assignment of some sort, okay, this can be incredibly powerful because I know from talking to lots of kids, at the end, they'll say, "Oh, that wasn't nearly as bad as I thought."
Yeah.
But you don't figure that out unless you actually get started. And that's, again, this is one that I use a lot. And that's what happens. You get started and it's like, oh, yeah, I fill out this, fill out this, fill out this. It's not that bad. It's not that bad. Your child will often do the same thing. Get going on an assignment, get going on the math sheet, get going on studying. It's like, yep, it's work, but it's not as bad as I predicted it would be. And you only figure that out when you get going.
So just do one thing, get started, do one thing, you know, and that's a start versus avoiding completely. And sometimes, it's anxiety about how the assignment's going to go. So we avoid the most powerful thing for anxiety. But sometimes that anticipation, that anticipatory anxiety, like Dave was saying, is worse than when we actually get into it. So get started, even if you do one thing. Okay. This is
Be,
a tough one.
be prepared for distractions. So after you get started, something's going to come up. Your phone is going to buzz. It's going to be time to watch a show, although that's not quite the same as it used to be. Something's going on in the house. Something somewhere is going to distract you. All of a sudden you feel hungry and you got to get up and eat something. There will be a distraction of some sort. So if you set yourself up and say, yep, I'm going, distractions will happen. And this is what I'm going to do when a distraction happens. Okay. And setting up beforehand what you're going to do is really, really helpful. So, preparation for distractions, you can't be surprised when something comes up that's going to pull you away.
And we're going to talk a little bit later. You guys might be thinking, oh, yeah, like it's easier said than done trying to get the cell phone or the iPad or the tablet or the Chromebook or whatever out of your kiddos' hands, especially when a lot of work is done on Chromebooks, especially in high school. We're going to talk about a little bit about that towards the end. But, if you can, I'm just going to go to the next slide. If you can commit to what you're going to do beforehand and set that intention, even if you say, for 15, 20 minutes, I'm going to put my stuff aside, my phone's going to go elsewhere, etc. And I'm going to focus on just starting this one thing, then that's a commitment to what you're going to do. I find it extremely helpful. And some people, everybody's different, right? This is the thing, you got to find what works for you. But I put it in my calendar and then I feel like there's some sort of, commitment or accountability. Let someone else know what you're going to do, so that there's accountability to get something done. But commit to what you're going to do, move the distractions to the side, and set a timer, whatever works for you to get through that first piece.
Often to set an intention, to commit to what you're doing, it is really helpful to tack on something that you want to do to something that you always do. Okay. So let me give you an example of that. And it usually comes after something you always do. After I get home from school, I will spend 15 minutes doing homework. That would be a good intention. It's specific, it's concrete, and there's a time and it's attached to something you always do. After supper, I will spend, 20 minutes practicing the piano. Right. After work, I will go work out for 15 minutes in the basement. Right. Those are a kind of intention that actually tend to happen. And once we set an intention, one of the really difficult things about procrastination is deciding to do something. When you decide, you're using willpower. When you've decided once, sort of forever, when this happens, I will be doing this, then you're not using willpower. You've used a decision that you made long ago. And it's not nearly as draining. It's just like, this is the way it is. And so for anybody who tends to do something like work out regularly, that's probably what they've done. They have a specific time, they set it aside. It's always this way. You're not deciding every morning at 5 in the morning, oh, am I going to the gym or am I not going to the gym? Because if you're deciding, you're pretty much for sure not going to the gym. So one of the things that happens is we set the intentions, we commit to what we're doing, we're way more likely to do it.
And you might notice in how we're talking, we're not saying, I'm coming home from school, I'm doing all my homework from beginning to end,
No.
because that is not motivating whatsoever. We're talking about setting a realistic goal. I'm going to work on this for X number of minutes, X number of questions, then I'm going to have a break. So sometimes, we do something first and then we have a snack. We do something we want to do. We give ourselves a little reward to keep us motivated and going. We're not talking about, and this is why cramming and doing an essay all night long isn't the greatest thing, because we're not designed to do that. So chunking is fantastic. It's a great way to train yourself to work through things that are large and that are a little bit daunting. I rarely write a whole report from beginning to end. Ever.
Yeah.
So when Dave and I were talking about, putting this in a short lunch and learn, we've done longer presentations to high schools. And, this is not easy. Parenting is not easy, but this is not easy to, convince yourself or your kids to engage in some of this. So some of the things that we do as parents is we model this. And when you model, you can speak out loud and say, ugh, doing my taxes is horrible. I hate it. I'm not organized, but it's something I have to do. You get in a lot of trouble if you don't do your taxes. So how am I going to do this? And then work through a process. I think, sometimes our teenagers may not believe that we have tasks that we find difficult and we procrastinate. So that modeling can be really powerful to show that you get it.
Absolutely.
The other piece that I think is really important is sometimes a little bit of validation of, yeah, this is hard. And I'll say that to myself. I know this report's going to be hard, but I have to do it and I have to get through it. So, setting yourself up, not just ignoring your emotions, but acknowledging them and then figuring out a way to problem solve and get yourself through it.
Yep.
Not easy, but possible.
Yeah, definitely possible. It's not easy to get your child to do it either. Sometimes you may have to point out to them what the costs are if they don't, right?
Mm-hmm.
The kinds of things like we all know what happens if we don't do our taxes. Kids don't always necessarily know what happens if I don't study adequately for a test. What does that mean? What happens? And so identifying costs can be useful. I have had a number of adolescents actually read that book by Timothy Pitchell, just because it's a book. It's not targeted at me. It's hard to kind of be defensive about somebody saying something when they've written it in a book because they're not saying it directly to you. It's just information about people in general. And that can be really, really helpful. So if you have especially a high school student or a pretty bright 7 or 8 student who's really struggling with this stuff, some of the concepts in there are a little bit complicated, but a lot of what you need to do is really pretty simple and straightforward. And I've found that that's made some difference for them. Okay.
So think about some of the things that you think that might work for you, some of the things that you think might work for modeling and teaching your kids to do, and what do you think might work? You know your kids best, you know yourself best. Different strategies work for different people, but hopefully there's one, again, pick one thing, try it out. The next time you have something that you really are feeling is hugely daunting and you'd rather put it off.